not also get, does not get reported, um, excuse me, does not get shared with your insurance company. Okay. And your insurance company will not give this information to New York City. They're not allowed to talk to anybody except you about your insurance. So filing a claim with insurance when appropriate, we're going to talk about that. But the 311, the report of damage is absolutely crucial. The numbers are being accumulated so that we can see if we can qualify for the disaster recovery funding. We have to trigger that number. Okay, so let's go back here. I just want to double check and make sure I've got, um, okay. All right. All right. Some people have very long questions. We'll have to get to those individually later. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so seepage, as I said, is not covered. The backup of sewers and drains is an endorsement. Flood. Now, this is where we need to be very specific because this matters. Language matters when you're talking about insurance, especially when you're talking to your insurance agent. Flood is defined in the insurance world as rising tides or moving groundwater. Okay. It's always covered on a separate policy. It is never covered on a homeowner's policy or renter's policy. It's a separate standalone single event, single line policy, and 99.9% of them come from the National Flood Insurance Program. Normally, the first Tuesday of the month, we spend an hour discussing the National Flood Insurance Program. I am going to speak about it, focusing on what you need to know so that you can recover from this event and prepare, hopefully, for the next. Okay, because as the governor said, this is a new normal. Um, so, but it's very important when you speak to your agent that you use the correct language. If you call your homeowner's insurance agent and say, my basement is flooded, they will tell you you do not have coverage because the policy doesn't cover flood. But that is flood as defined by the National Flood Insurance Program, rising tides or moving groundwater. Sandy was an example of rising tides. Okay. Ida was an example of moving groundwater. This storm, which I don't know whether or not it ever got a name, I think it did, but not by the NOAA. At any rate, the great storm, we'll call it, was mostly moving groundwater. Okay, there were some tides that overflowed and people had tidal damage, but most of it was moving groundwater. That is not covered by a homeowner's policy. That is only covered by a flood policy. Okay, so let's get back here. Okay. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, so seepage is not covered, but again, you want to be careful with those cracks. Make sure that you have an engineer come in. You want to make sure that you're not dealing with a sinkhole, a potential sinkhole. Water backup is an endorsement. We'll discuss it in greater length. And flood is a word you use with extreme caution. You only say flood if it's rising tides or moving groundwater. Okay, let's just clarify this. I like this little graphic that you get this every month, every 3 months, excuse me, whenever you get your water bill. And it's useful to distinguish how where coverages are and based on where the water comes from. Okay, the sewer and water mains that go down the center of the street, they're owned by the city of New York and maintained by them. If they break, okay, it's the city's responsibility to repair them. But the water that comes gushing out of them, or the sewage, comes rolling down the street like a river and it flows into your house. That is moving groundwater. That is a flood. If you have flood insurance, you can file a claim. It doesn't have to be a disaster declaration. You have a flood policy. You have damage from moving groundwater. You can file a claim. The service lines that come from the mains to your house are owned by the city of New York, but you are responsible to repair and replace them, the owner of the property. That can be a very chunky piece of of money and has to be done rapidly, and they are not insured by your homeowner's policy because you do not own them. Some insurance companies offer an endorsement for the sewer lines or the water lines. You want to compare that to what the city has set up with this organization, and you want to compare coverages and cost. Okay, these are the costs. You can insure it through your water bill. The fee would be added to your water bill. The coverage is from this company, not your insurance company. And again, this can be very expensive. This could be 10, 15, $20,000. The water that goes into your house from these sewer mains or that gets backed up because these back up, okay, that is what's called water backup. And that is the damage to the interior and the personal possessions inside. That is covered by the backup of sewers and drains endorsement. Okay, so you have rolling groundwater, that's a flood. You have the sewer line breaks, you have to repair them. The insurance for that will be in a service line policy. And then the backup of sewers and drains into your house, that could be covered by the endorsement for backup of sewers and drains. Now, because it is an endorsement, unlike the standard coverages, it does vary from company to company. So you want to know what your coverage is. Oh, I have water backup, I'm fine. Well, you first thing you want to know is what is it costing you? Okay, it's usually not onerous. And then is there a limit to the coverage? I've seen $5,000 limits, $10,000 limits. Is the deductible the same as your standard deductible, or is it a different deductible? We talk about how deductibles work in our homeowners webinar. Deductibles are subtracted from your claim. You do not spend a deductible up front. That is not a deductible. Okay, and is a sump pump required? The sump pump is sort of like your first line of defense for water in the basement. It pumps things out. It's triggered by the presence of water, but you have to be sure that it was installed properly by a licensed plumber, because if it's a faulty installation, you will not be able to, your claim will be denied. All right. So backup of sewers and drains is one place where you can get money to repair the damage from this rainstorm if the rain caused the sewers to back up into your property, into your home. Now, I'm very concerned about the damage done by sewer backup because we are talking about contamination. And taking the shop back and sopping up the water is not sufficient. This is contaminated stuff. Everything it touches is contaminated. We're talking about pulling up the floor, pulling up the subfloor, getting down to the ground or the slab, okay, and decontaminating everything. The rule of thumb is wherever the sewage touches on your walls, okay, you measure up 2 feet, 2 feet, and take out all of that sheetrock. Okay, that's why backup of sewers and drains coverage can cover you. Like I say, you want a $10,000 limit, you might need every penny of that to truly recover from sewage backup. Okay, the fact that you can't smell it anymore doesn't mean that it's not still contaminated. And of course, your personal possessions have all been contaminated. Absolutely professional recovery for those. Okay, running them through the washing machine with some bleach, probably not sufficient. There are people who do that. Okay, all right. Let's see. For some reason, I have 6 participants raised hands. I'm trying to see what's going on with that. I can't really do low raised hands, so please use the Q&A. Okay. Um, Okay, but there's one question that's been put in here that is a rather long one. Please contact me directly. Just copy that out and post it to me in an email. Okay. Then the coverage about roof damage. Okay, a leaking roof. This is something that we need to discuss too, about how this damage happened and where it is. Okay, so let's go back to this. We talked about backup of sewers and drains. Now, okay, okay, the Again, I mentioned that flood is a very specific definition. Rising tides and moving groundwater not covered, and it's the National Flood Insurance Program. That's where we get our flood policies. There is a complicated situation with the changing risks and the changes in the program. And again, we usually do this in depth on the first Tuesday of the month. Going forward, we're going to do it on the second Monday of the month, and we will return to an in-depth look at the flood insurance issues. But tonight, I just want to cover the stuff you need to know. Only the National Flood Insurance Policy or a private policy that covers flood and only flood will give you money for flood damage, rising tides, moving groundwater. Okay, and a lot of the damage came from moving groundwater in neighborhoods where people don't usually have a flood policy because you're not in a special flood hazard area, which is all about tidal flooding. The way that the program is changing is there's going to be more emphasis on this other kind of flooding, the moving groundwater flooding. But right now, the program is mostly focused on tidal flooding, rising tides. So that's coastal people who are required to get flood policies. So if you've been in the center of New York City or the center of Brooklyn, from Ida, Crown Heights got hit hard by moving groundwater from Ida. Okay, come gushing down the streets, did tremendous damage. And that damage was not covered by insurance because who in the middle of Crown Heights would buy a flood policy? Okay, so we have an issue to deal with in terms of how are we going to manage this risk? Okay, and that's some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, so what you need to know about the National Flood Insurance Program. Again, we're going to not focus on the program in its entirety tonight, but you just need to have some information so you can make some decisions about whether or not you need a flood policy. Every building in New York City is in a flood zone. Everybody has a flood zone, okay? Flood insurance is available to everybody in New York City. You don't have to be in the high-risk flood zone, okay? Coverage for contents as opposed to the structure can be purchased separately. And this is something we want to look at. Do you need contents coverage? Because the real question here is, would you ever get anything from contents coverage? And claims, of course, you don't have to have a disaster declaration. Remember, that's what we're trying to accumulate the numbers for so that we can get federal money for recovery. But if you have a flood policy and you have flood damage, you can file a claim whether or not we trigger the federal disaster funds, all right? But there are limited coverages. It's not a guaranteed replacement cost policy. To be as brief as possible, the National Flood Insurance Program should be called the National Floodplain Management Program. It is designed to help communities recover from flood, and also help them mitigate and reduce the chances of it happening again. It was never intended to give you enough money to replace what you lost from the flood. It is intended to give you enough money so your house becomes safe and habitable. That's why there are restrictions on not only how much money you get, but what the money can be used for, okay, to make your home safe and habitable so you can return home and continue your recovery. The National Flood Insurance Program is never going to be a full replacement program. Its intention is to help start recovery, not to make it whole. All right. So, okay. And we're going to go back. Okay. All right. So, safe and habitable. Now, do you need a flood policy? Well, you want to know what your current flood zone is. Okay, the maps that we're looking at for the current flood zone are from 1983. They're woefully out of date. They do not represent the reality of the risk. However, we do have the advisory maps that we can look at. These advisory maps will, in fact, help us determine what our actual risk is right now. Okay, and that is what information that the flood program is now using to determine the cost of your flood insurance, not where you are on the map, but where your house is in relationship to flood risk. Okay, if you have a federally backed mortgage and you're in the high risk zone, the special flood hazard area, your lender will require you to have a flood policy. So you already know that if you're in a current high risk flood zone. However, when we get our new maps about the the high risk floodplain is going to expand by about 90%. Canarsie, 2/3 of Canarsie is going to become a high risk flood zone. Right now, the Canarsie has very few homes that are on the current flood map as high risk, even though we know it was high risk because Sandy happened. Okay, the advisory map shows that all those homes, a lot of those homes, the majority of homes are going to have to get a flood policy if they have a federally backed mortgage when the map is approved, which I am promised again this year. It will be in 2024. Okay. And the other trick question is, did this property receive FEMA or HUD aid for a flood? Okay, this is where we have to think about what happened after Build It Back finished up, and after Sandy. The property that got money from the federal government, and that would be um, Rapid Repair and Build It Back, okay, and FEMA individual assistance for flood, that property address is recorded in FEMA. And when there is another flood and you come to the federal government for help, the first thing they will do is look at your address. They will see if this property had federal aid for flood, and they will ask you to show them your current flood policy. Oh, well, I didn't own the house. Well, that doesn't matter who owned it then or who owns it now, who got the money and who didn't. Federal aid went to that location. It's a flood risk, and that location has to have a flood policy. For those of you who purchased in coastal neighborhoods, something like Canarsie, after Sandy, okay, you may have a need for flood insurance that you are not aware of because the current map that your lender uses is out of date, okay? But Mother Nature didn't wait for the new maps to change the risk, okay? So, okay, I'm trying to keep up with the, okay. Okay, there's some really good questions. We're going to have to do a Q&A before we close. I promise you we will. Okay, so let's go back here to how do you know all this stuff, okay? Because 50% of the flood insurance claims come from not the high special flood hazard area, but the low and moderate risk areas. I'm going to click onto this website. Let's see, maybe I should go at it a different way. Okay, hold on. Let me get into my share screen. Ah, here we go. Let's see if I can get it here. Oh, okay. Sorry about this. I'm sorry. Let me go back to there. Okay, and go back to here. Okay, usually I can get to it from here. Okay. Okay. Please raise your hand if you can see this. Okay. This is the Flood Help New York website. Okay, good, you can. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look about where our flood risk is and where it's going to be. This is a very useful tool. So I do want you to use this. Okay, so I'm going to put in the address of my Canarsie office, all right, to show you how the map works and how it can help guide you in determining whether or not you need flood insurance. Okay, 9701 Avenue L. Okay, in Brooklyn, it's GSA coded, so you click on the drop down. Okay, and I'm going to pretend I'm a homeowner, and I agree it's not perfect. What in life is. All right, so I'm going to go first to the current map. All right, let me pull out a little. Oops, excuse me, pull out a little here. Okay, this is Canarsie. All right, the purple and pink areas are the special flood hazard area on the 1983 map. This is the advisory map. This is where we pretty much believe that the new map is going to fall in. And you can see the huge increase all around Jamaica Bay. It's really all over the city of where the special flood hazard area is going to be. And actually, these are high risk areas right now. The reality of the risk is already there. The mapping process is trying to catch up. This is also a very good overlay of the Sandy inundation. Okay, so if you put your address in here and look, see Staten Island and everybody, there's your current map, the lender when you purchase your house said you don't need flood insurance. Okay, you're not in the special flood hazard area. Well, first of all, you're going to be very soon. And secondly, it's very likely that that homeowner got federal help for Sandy. That means your property's on the list. And do you need a flood policy? Well, without one, you won't get any more help from any kind of a flood. Okay.
That's the audience cannot see the Flood Help New York screen. You have to unshare
Really?
share that.
They,
Yes.
I've got people saying they can see it.
I have Jill Cornell saying it's not visible and I can't see it either.
Okay, well, I will, floodhelpny.org is the place to go to see what your current risk is and what your new risk is going to be. Let me see if I can bring it up this
Yeah,
way.
you'd have to unshare your slides and then
Yeah, okay,
open up
hold on.
the website.
Yeah, let me try and do that.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
Now it's visible.
Now it's visible. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you see that thing? That's our office in Canarsie. The advisory map shows you where you are going to be having a high risk location, the special flood hazard area, coming next year. And there's also a good indication of the inundation of Sandy. Again, if you bought a house here, the current map says, oh, you didn't need flood insurance. That's because your lender knows the current map didn't trigger the requirement. But if it was inundated by Sandy, you can be pretty sure it got federal help. And if you don't have a flood policy, you won't be able to get any federal help from any further flood. Okay. So flood insurance, do you need it? It's not an easy answer. Okay. Because another thing that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about this, okay, is what is covered. And this is going to affect how much insurance you want to purchase and whether or not it's going to make any sense for you. Because like I said, this is not a replacement policy, not intended to. There is a maximum amount of coverage, $250,000. That was based pretty much on the cost of building a home somewhere in the riverbanks of Ohio in 1970. All right. $100,000 of personal property, and you can have a varying deductible. Now, when you make a claim, and let's say you make a claim for 60,000, the adjuster says, yeah, you get 60,000, your deductible will be applied to that number. So if you have a $5,000 deductible, which you can on a flood policy, you will not get 60,000, you will get 55,000. Okay, we cover the use of the deductible in our home insurance, but what you need to know here is that this is one of the keys you can use to manage the cost of your flood insurance. Okay. Now, you do not have to get personal property at all. You can just leave that off. You do not, unless your mortgage lender requires it, you do not have to get the whole $250,000. Okay. If you don't buy the maximum, you'll get prorated on any claim, but at least you will have a flood policy in place, which will certainly help start your recovery and make you eligible for further aid if this property got flooded before. Okay. Now, there is very limited basement coverage because the National Floodplain Management System does not want to encourage risky flood behavior. So there is limited coverage for anything in the basement. The mechanicals that run your home are covered. The clothes washer and dryer, and a food freezer with the food in it. The food freezer is the great big thing, not an extra refrigerator. Okay, not covered will be the finishing of the walls, floors, and ceilings. and personal belongings and contents. So here's where you pause for thought about a flood policy. The water goes always to the lowest level. All right. So if that's your basement, there's going to be limited coverage for the damage that it does. It covers the perimeter walls. All right. And it covers the wherever the flood line is and then 6 feet up. Okay. That's cut off, and that's you can get the money to replace it. You cannot get the money to replace the tiles on the floor or the carpeting on the floor. It's going to be a bare bones floor. Same with the ceilings. The interior walls will not be covered. If you have an apartment down there, the kitchen appliances will not be covered, neither will the bathrooms. Okay. But and of course, no contents, none of your personal possessions. You can put anything you want to in your basement according to the National Flood Insurance Program. They don't care what you put there. They're just telling you, you put that stuff below grade, it's not going to be covered. Only the mechanicals that run your house and the support of your structure. That is covered. Now, that means if you're a renter in a basement apartment, a flood policy will do you no good at all because nothing will be covered. If you have a homeowner and you have structural issues down there, this is when you want to consider how much flood insurance you want to buy. And do you want any contents at all? Because remember, the contents is only covered if it's on the above grade, above the ground. Okay. So that helps you decide whether or not you should be purchasing a flood policy. Okay. Now, is it going to be worth it? Okay. One thing that has changed that I want to bring up, because this will interact with some of the information I'm going to give you forward about repairs and recovery, is if you move your machinery and equipment, this is the electric and the heating, if you have a HVAC. Okay, if you move them above where the water is expected to go, see on a crawl space, it's going to go there. So you would have the mechanicals here. In a walkout basement, okay, remember, this is considered underground. It's not going to be covered. But if you move it up here, okay, or if you move it up here, you will get a discount on your flood insurance. Okay, not enough to pay for what it costs you to move it, but it will give you a continuing discount every year because you have mitigated the risk. You have lessened the risk and you get rewarded for that, okay, with a lower premium. Now, let's talk about the claims process because once we have determined that you have insurance coverage, it's pretty much the same regardless of where you're doing it, okay? If you have damage from the back of sewers and drains and you have the coverage, you're going to be talking to your homeowner's insurance company. If you have damage from flood and you have a flood policy, you're going to be talking to the flood the flood company that wrote the policy. The individual insurance companies like Allstate and State Farm do write the National Flood Insurance Program. And so you may see a logo on your flood policy. It is always and still and everywhere a National Flood Insurance Program. Everything is set at the national level, the rates, the coverages, and the exclusions. Okay. So we're all dealing with the same thing. It doesn't vary from company to company. So you want to determine where did the water come from, okay? And do I have insurance coverage somewhere for that? When we talk about roofs, and this terrible rainstorm did a lot of roof damage, you have to be careful to make sure that this event caused the problem. If you have evidence of a continuing leak, that this happens every other rainstorm, and you haven't done repairs, then your claim for damage from rain on your homeowner's policy would likely be denied. So, okay, so let's talk about making claims and the issues about that. And I promise we will go to the questions as soon as we get the core of this talked about. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, The first thing you want to do is photograph the damage, okay? You do not go into any part of the building unless you are sure it is safe. Water can destabilize a house, especially if there's a great deal of it in the basement, okay? And pumping it out very quickly can destabilize a house, but you want to go in and photograph the damage, okay? And you want to, you'll do it on your cell phones. You have date and time stamps. And if things have been damaged to the point where you're photographing lumps of sodden materials, look for pre-event photos, okay, so that you can show and demonstrate and remember yourself what you lost. All right. You are also expected to minimize further damage. And again, this is dependent on your being safe. You do not wade into standing water. All right. But you don't wait for the adjuster. All right. Because that just increases the damage and the mildew, the mold, the rot. So you can take stuff out as soon as possible. All right. But you want to keep, again, like snippets of materials and stuff. We do a much longer claims process in the home insurance webinar, but you want to be able to demonstrate what you lost, and that those little snippets can help. But yes, you want to photograph so you have a record of the damage. You want to minimize the damage by getting that stuff out, and then you want to report the claim to the insurance company. You want to speak to your agent first, you do not call the claims department first, because every call to the claims department for each event is counted as a claims call. Even if the answer is no, you don't have coverage. Okay, it's still a claims call, and that's what they track. Not so much the amount of the claim, but how many times you rattle their cage. So the first thing you do is you call your agent and say, am I covered for this damage? And of course, the agent's going to want to know, well, where did the damage come from? If it was from the water that came rolling down the street into your house, okay, only covered if there's a flood policy. If it was the sewers backing up, that would be you have to check that you have a backup of sewers and drains coverage. If it was problems from the rain coming from the roof, okay, very likely that would be on your homeowner's policy. But again, it has to be connected to this event. All right. So you call your agent and determine whether or not this event is covered by your policy, and what is your deductible, because you don't file a claim unless you're going to get enough money so the deductible won't matter. Okay, you've got $1,000 worth of damage and a $500 deductible. You're only going to get $500 plus a little check mark. Okay, but if you have $6,000 worth of damage and a $1,000 deductible, good Lord, you need that $5,000. Go for it. Okay, use your insurance. You do not get canceled for using your insurance, not unless you do a material misrepresentation, which you're not going to do. Okay. And you do not get your rates raised automatically. It's not like running a car into, the car ahead of you where you just proved you're a risky driver. This is just stuff happens, and that's what insurance is for. So they don't raise your rates for filing a claim. If you file multiple claims over a fairly short period of time, let's say you file 3 claims in 3 years, you may be non-renewed for frequency of claims. It doesn't mean you can't get insurance. It just means you have to go to another company who's willing to take the risk, and they will know what your record is. That's why I say, don't call the adjuster, don't call the claims department, okay, to ask whether or not you can file a claim. That's the question you ask your agent. Once you are sure this is going to be a claim that's worth it, then you call the claims department. Okay. All right, so let's go back here. Okay. Now, okay. All claims on negotiations disputes are common and expected. The insurance company, these adjusters are negotiators, okay? They're going to give an offer and you're going to push back. There's a whole process to the claims. You're going to, if it's structural damage, you're going to have your engineer, they're going to have their engineer. You're going to reach somewhere in the middle of what needs to be repaired. And just have to keep in mind that what needs to be repaired is what's going to be covered by the insurance is what was damaged by the event, okay? If that rain caused a section of your roof to leak, okay, That's the event. The rest of the roof, which you may want to clean up and redo since you've proven, you're sure there's a weakness there, that would be covered under maintenance and not by the insurance company. But the event is what is covered. Okay. This is not a maintenance or rehab coverage. And that's something that you have to sort out with your engineers and construction people because the roofer wants to do the whole roof. The insurance company is only going to pay for the part that was damaged by this rainstorm. Okay. And you want to make sure that you keep notes and use email. This is true when you deal with your agent also. Whenever you have a phone conversation, you want to get their email address so you can send them an email saying, according to our discussion on such a date, I understand that. And then you write down what you believe they told you. That accomplishes two things. It gives you a record of what they told you, and it also gives them a chance to clarify what they meant to tell you. Okay. This is very important with your insurance agent. Okay. Because whatever your agent tells you will usually trump whatever an adjuster says. Oh, well, that stuff should have had a fine arts policy rider. Oh, no, the agent told me that that artwork didn't need a fine arts schedule. And here's the email from, October of 23 to show that. Okay. So you want to keep those emails and make sure you have everything in writing. You also want to get your maintenance records if you can. Like I said, that roof damage. Well, the first pushback from the insurance company is going to be if you had taken better care of this roof, that wouldn't have happened. Well, you push back with, I have a receipt from a roofer from 3 years ago. He did a full inspection and a patch. I have been taking care of my roof. It's a negotiation. Okay. Neglect is their default position. Don't go for it. Show that you have. Repointed the bricks. This rain could have driven through your bricks and done a lot of interior damage. That's covered by a homeowner's policy, most of them. Okay. At least certainly by the all risk. But if you haven't repointed your bricks in 40 years, your claim will be denied. Okay, poor maintenance matters. And be very, very careful about public adjusters and any contractor. Okay. Anybody who shows up on your doorstep with an easy solution to these issues, okay, is probably a scam. Okay, you're standing there in devastation, and here comes somebody who's going to take care of all of it for you. Okay, not only will they handle this complex claims process with the insurance company, and frankly, it is complex, especially when it comes to personal property and listing stuff, and then the structure and getting different bids. It is complicated. And some people do use a public adjuster to work them through that. Okay. Maybe your agent can give you a reference to someone who is reliable and, honest. Okay. But people wandering down the street making you sign contracts is not the way to go. All right. Especially if they tell you not only will they take care of the claim, but they'll do the repairs as well. Red flag time. Okay. You don't want that to happen because once you sign a contract with a public adjuster to handle your claim, you are now out of the loop. Whatever the public adjuster does with the adjuster at the insurance company, they're going to get 12% of the payout and you're going to get the rest, and you have no say in what happens. And if you sign a contract for the construction, oh yeah, and we'll take all that money and we'll fix your house. Your chances of them taking all that money to fix your house are very slim to none. Okay. So buyer beware, do not sign contracts with strangers. Do not sign away your insurance rights just because you're overwhelmed at the moment. Remember, we have organizations like NHS here to help you. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So again, you're going to photograph the damage. You're going to try to get rid of all that stuff. I haven't heard yet of any debris removal volunteers, but that may be coming. We'll try to keep an eye out for that. You're going to speak to your agent to see if you have coverage, and you're going to choose your words carefully. You're going to negotiate with the adjuster. You will push back. Okay. You're going to make sure that you use your maintenance records to put back because, oh, this rain would not have damaged your property if you had done the maintenance. Well, I had the bricks repointed 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Roofs have warranties for 10, 15 years. All right. And just be very careful about handing this off. All right. And as we said, please report the damage to New York City. Okay. You can call 311 if you need to do it visually. This is the video relay service. This is for the hard of hearing. You can go to the severe weather page, or you can go to the report damage portal. If you have difficulty filing your report of damage, let us know and we will see how we can help you. But all the recovery funding is triggered by the reported damage. And the state emergency declaration does not mean they're going to give us any money to recover. That's just that, hello, you got an emergency going on. The disaster declarations, that is triggered by how much money we manage to report. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how, some resources for this. But before we go into that, I want to look at the Q&A, okay, and see where we are in terms of answer. Okay, so because I got a lot of questions here. Okay, now someone asked about a basement flooded, and I think that this is a long story. You need to contact me individually, okay? Besides 311, where should we file? I've left this screen up so you can write these things down. We talked about roof damage, okay? And again, the the level of your coverage determines whether or not you have coverage for rain damage. It is on the basic policy, okay? So remember, the levels are basic, broad, and special. You probably have special, okay? All your homeowners insurance information and a disclaimer that things that it will share this information. Okay, when it comes to funding disasters and using public funds to repair your damaged property, they can't duplicate funds. Okay, so right now they're pre-gathering the information so that there won't be a duplication of any funding that may come down later. All right, that's when they're talking about sharing the information. Only when disaster funding becomes available, which it is not at the moment. Okay. Seepage is not covered. Okay, the cracks in the neighborhood's brick building and causes damage to my home. That would be a liability issue. And again, we want to send out, you want to get a hold of a geoengineer because you want to check and see what is causing that cracks. It may not have been the rainstorm. It may have been that the rain has taken more materials out from underneath your home, and we are looking at a potential sinkhole. Okay. Um, Mold remediation and fixing sheetrock. Okay. Flood insurance will cover the mold remediation and the sheetrock, as I said, 2 feet up from the line of where the floodwaters came. Okay. And mold remediation, yes, is part of recovery from this kind of damage. Okay. And also, if it was a backup of sewers and drains, again, mold remediation will be part of that. Basically, they're drying things out. Okay. Hopefully, you've gotten the debris out fast enough that you're not generating mold. But again, making sure that it's truly dried out is part of the recovery, part of the repair. Okay. And do I think FEMA will declare this as a disaster? Only if we report the damage. I'm leaving this screen up. Please tell your friends and neighbors, everyone at your church, the guys at the bodega, get this information in. I'm not going to be sharing this presentation. Again, this is going to be, because the information will change, we will send you resources like this. Okay, I know I don't see the maps, but we cured that. Okay, roof, water off the roof into the backyard. It's faster than the sump pump could handle. Okay. All right, this is a backup. Okay, I would call. I would talk to your agent. Okay, this is what's happened here. The water poured off the roof and from the backyard faster than the sump pump could handle it. Okay, the drains were full. The basement was 4 inches deep underwater. That would be a backup of sewers and drains. Okay, so you call your agent and you do not say my basement was flooded. You say my drains backed up because my sump pump failed. Okay. Or my drains backed up. All right. They'll come out. They'll see that you did have a sump pump. It didn't fix the problem because it got overwhelmed, didn't we all? And then you'll proceed from there to negotiate your claim. Okay. Um, would it cover water that came in through the brickwork? Okay. Well, again, this is where you're going to have to deal with the pushback of, well, if you'd taken better care, it wouldn't help. I think I addressed this question about showing your maintenance records and pushing back. Yes, I have been maintaining my home. Doesn't have to be perfect, okay, but you have to show that you haven't been neglecting it. A friend of mine actually had wind-driven rain damage, and when the adjuster came out and they asked when was the last time we reported the bricks, 40 years ago was not the correct answer. Okay. All right. So again, you are negotiating a claim. Okay. When you get adjustable storage unit for the basement, what is suggested the height to have for the lowest shelf? Well, frankly, this is immaterial because if your basement is flooded from moving groundwater or rising tides, doesn't matter where the contents is, it's not going to be covered by flood insurance. So you know, it doesn't matter if the stuff in the basement is up. If it's damaged, it's still not covered. So I don't really know how to deal with that question. Um, okay. And can you fire a public adjuster? It's extremely difficult. You have to negate a contract that you signed. Okay. A public adjuster is, you've signed a contract, it's a legal document. Okay. You're going to end up with another lawyer. Okay. Um, okay. Oh, about moving the insurance premium, moving appliances from the basement. That doesn't have any effect on your homeowner's insurance. That is specifically a flood mitigation credit, and it will apply to any flood policy, even if you have a flood policy in the moderate risk zone. Okay, you will still get the credit for mitigating the risk. So, but only from the flood policy. The homeowners doesn't care where you put it because they don't insure it for flood. Okay, fire, yeah. Okay, a whole host of other things, but flood only on the flood policy. Okay. All right. I think that is the current questions answered. So let's go to some help we might be able to get for repairing this damage. Because as we know, insurance does not ever cover anything. This was a rain event. This was moving groundwater for a whole lot of people in areas where flood policies are very rare. Okay. There was tidal flooding. A lot of people had flood policies in those areas. So again, you want to use them. You don't have to wait for a disaster to be declared if you have a flood policy and you had flood damage. You can file a claim directly. Okay. But now we've got a lot of damage, and what are we going to do? Well, we do have a few issues. Okay. Okay, I'm still getting more questions. Uh, okay. Okay. Um, Talking about filing claims, will my insurance increase? Filing a claim does not automatically increase your insurance, but before you file that claim for the water coming through the bricks, you want to check with your agent, okay? Are you covered for this event? All right. And secondly, take a look at your maintenance records. If you haven't reported those bricks in a long time, your claim could be denied. So make sure it's worth it to you before you file a claim. But yes, wind-driven rain coming through bricks and sashes, that is a standard coverage, but they always put back on the maintenance side. Okay, so you're gonna negotiate. Okay. Because of these storms, it is recommended to get water and sewer line coverage with the American Resources. Okay, I am not going to recommend any service line company. The one that's on your water bill, that was a relationship between the city of New York and the company. I am going to make the assumption that the city did their due diligence in vetting the company. You want to read the policy before you agree to it, okay? And again, the backup of sewers and drains is damage inside your house that would only be covered by an endorsement. The breaking and clogging of those service lines themselves, that is what the service line coverage is for. Okay. We have seen these old service lines break, cause tremendous damage, and cost 10, 15, $20,000 to repair. So do you want to get this insurance? Think about it carefully. We've seen a lot of damage from those pipes breaking. Okay, so I'm trying to keep up with that. Okay, so now we go to some issues of what we might be able to do to help repair. We have a resilient retrofit loan program. Okay, it's a 1% loan and it applies to homes in the 500-year floodplain, not just the high-risk area, which on the map is A and E, but also the shaded X area. And like 50% of flood claims come from there. Okay, so if your home is located in either on that map, you saw the pink areas, well, there's yellow areas too. That's the 500-year floodplain. You can qualify for this loan, provided, of course, that the household limits are met. It's 120% of AMI. Don't have to worry about your credit score. Okay, it's up to $50,000 for primary residence only. Okay, you can't do this for your second home. Okay, and the loans are payable over 10 to 15 years. So we're talking about a 1% loan of up to $50,000. It will do things like elevate your electrical equipment. Okay, remember we talked that that gets you a discount on your flood policy, flood-proof interior systems, and flood resistant materials, definitely lowering the damage was done by flood. Installing flood vents, a sump pump. Okay, a sump pump you would put in conjunction with a backup of sewers and drains endorsement. Okay, backwater valves. Okay, this again is you're going to use the residential one, must be done by a licensed plumber, like the sump pump. Okay, the backflow preventer is for the commercial side. This is for um, residential side. This is much more elaborate. You would use this if you had a laundromat, okay? But again, licensed people to install these. And then flood damage resistant materials. You certainly want to see if you can get a hold of that. Also applies for energy improvements, energy efficient appliances. Okay, replace the systems with an all-electric heat pump. Okay, so this is $50,000. All right, it is restricted to the AE and shaded X because it's primarily flood mitigation, flood damage mitigation. But again, a 1% loan, we're thrilled that this is available. And to get it, you call NHS and ask for our rehab department, Byron Todman. Okay, so call NHS. We are part of this program. We'll be delighted to help you. Um, since you are talking about repairs that need to be done, don't overlook our Veterans Grant Program. This is a grant. You don't have to pay it back. And it is really for mobility issues. Excuse me, I'm trying to move this little thing out of the way. Okay, so a veteran would be anyone who served in the armed forces, including the Coast Guard. The the disability does not have to be related to service. It can simply be aging out. Your tenant is now getting old and he can't handle the staircase. Rather than having to have that tenant move out, you can get a chairlift. The tenant can apply for this. We'll work with the landlord, okay? Walk-in showers, all of the door widening. Whenever you're rehabbing your home, Okay, whenever you're redoing your home, you really want to be conscious of universal standards. That means that they're going to be accessible either right now or can be made accessible. All right, because we all want to age in place and we're all going to get old. You are one misstep away from needing a grab bar next to your toilet. And again, you can get really nice looking ones. We talk about this in landlord training sometimes. Okay, so okay, let's go back. I'm sorry, I need to go back here. Okay, but I'm very excited about this is a grant. And again, I don't know what repairs you may have to do, but this is something that could help you recover here. And even if you didn't get damaged, take a look at this, okay? Talk to your friends and neighbors, especially anyone you know who's a veteran, because again, this is about aging out, aging in place, not about a service-related disability, okay? Now, we also have our weatherization program. Again, there's income restrictions, which are really rather tight, but an energy audit would be something that could really help you determine what you need to do to make your home energy efficient and keep the intrusion of rain. These rainstorms, like the governor said, are going to continue. So you need to make sure that you're adjusting your home to deal with them. And this energy audit, the sealing of doors and windows, okay, proper insulation, all right. I'm sorry, we have the replacement thing. I've got a few too many tabs open. Okay. All right, hold on here. Okay, so we've got there's some help available here. And again, even if you don't qualify economically for this grant, or you can again, or I think it's a soft at any rate, a grant. It's free. Okay, you can get an energy audit for a very small fee. Like I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's worth it because then you will find out where the holes are. Okay, and that's what you need to address. Okay, there's no point in buying brand new windows if it's your bricks that are the problem. So the energy audit will help you determine where to use your limited resources to make your home safe from these continuing problems. Okay, now preparing for rainstorms. This Rainfall Ready is a great little pamphlet. This is what my friends use before a rainstorm comes. I have a friend who goes out with a rake down to the corner and makes sure those storm drains are clear. After and Ida, Coney Island, organized because they've been dealing with this a lot, and they sent troops of teenagers out to clear the gutters and the storm drains, and they did not get the kind of backup that happened in other places where people really didn't understand what those storm drains were for. They're not for trash. They're to move that water. Okay. Getting your drains clean on your roof, especially flat roofs. You really, when you hear there's rain coming, you really need to get up there and make sure that that drain is not clogged because the weight of that water, if it doesn't get to drain, can collapse your roof. Okay. And yes, it's fine if you're insured for collapse, but who needs the hassle if you can mitigate the risk? That is what this is about. So there's a whole bunch of things, keeping our sewer system clear is really a key issue. There's, temporary protections you can put up. This pamphlet is available at Rainfall Ready NYC. Okay. One thing I want to say about the uh, preparing for this kind of thing and the drains, our system was overwhelmed by this rain, not because of the number of inches that fell, but because of the rate at which it fell. Our storm drain system can handle about 1.7 inches per hour. Okay, that was what the meteorologist at Cornell University said, so I'll believe him. This rain came down at the rate of 2 inches an hour, 3 inches an hour. All right. No storm system can handle that. Okay. It overwhelmed ours. I can't imagine where we would build one that could handle that kind of rain. But we better start thinking about it because this is going to happen. All right. Let me go back to this shared screen thing. backwater valves, proper roof drainage. Like I said, you need to keep that water off the roof. You don't want it to collapse. And these are a number of suggestions to prepare for the next storm. Okay. Now, we also want to look at our city as a whole, because this group, which is the Towards a Rainproof New York, Rebuild by Design, and One Architecture, these people have been doing great work about turning the concrete jungle into a sponge. Okay, I have said for years that forget about putting up walls to stop the water from the North Atlantic. Nobody's going to build a sponge. Well, we can build a sponge. We can make New York City a sponge, because remember, we are doing a number of things here. The ground in many places like Canarsie is sinking. The water table is rising. The groundwater is rising and getting brackish. Our infrastructure is older. There are natural things like the oyster banks and the plantings of the marshes and the extending of that. All those natural things can also help. Okay, but we need to adapt to the new changes, and there is some good information available for that. Okay, so let's get back here. Okay. And again, these are some of the ideas that are contained in that report. We'll give you the link to it. It's fascinating. And this is where we need to start acting like a community. How are we going to adapt to this changing condition? It is going to continue. All right. And we don't put up a wall, we put up a sponge. All right, we want you to be prepared for emergencies and disasters. Okay, your go bag needs to be ready to go at all times. Ready New York. Okay, this will help you plan. Okay, making sure that your family knows that there's a phone call, a phone number to use that's out of town. Okay, Notify New York. This will give you the information you need to deal with the emergency now. Your zone, knowing your zone is different than your flood zone. This is the evacuation zone. They are not overlapping. They are not the same thing. They're not used for the same purposes, because you can have an evacuation declared for things like chemical or smoke conditions. But if you are asked to evacuate, please evacuate. Okay, it is not the event. Oh, good. I wrote out the storm. Yeah, you wrote out the storm, and now it's going to be 6 weeks before anybody can get to you, because everything that is needed to do the repairs is kept back out of the cone of danger and needs to be brought forward through a rubble of infrastructure. All right. This is why sequencing response is so important. And this is something that you need to be aware of. Evacuation is to protect you not just from the event, but from the consequences of that event. Okay. All right. So let's go back here and see. I want to see one more time to see if there's any more questions. Okay. Um, Okay, the AWS water insurance is not about water damage to your home. Okay, it's about the damage to the pipes. Okay, and again, it's not that they're going to come and pump out water, it's whether or not that pipe got broken. Okay, um, can we call 311 on a restaurant that blocks a sewer? Um, Yes, I know, but that's going to be a different, they're going to send you, I think, to a different department. I'm a little blank space about what it is. The Department of Environmental Protection is the one that I believe is responsible for sewers. Okay. Um, this graphic would be helpful. It's not on Rainfall Ready New York. I'm not sure what graphic you're talking about. This is the graphic that is part of Rainfall Ready New York. Okay. And it's part of their pamphlet. Okay, this is the pamphlet is what you're looking for. It has all these suggestions written down. Okay, all right. I want to put up, okay, the reporting screen. Okay, all right. And I want to give you a few more minutes to put in questions. Okay. Okay, all right, and then I'm going to close down the seminar. We have gone over the time allotted, but we need to do what we need to do. And We will be continue to do webinars on a regular basis about flooding risk and other emergencies. We will be responding very nimbly, as we always do, to any events that happen. We are your partner. If you don't see resources that you need, okay, let us know. All right, we'll see if we can find them. We are still gathering the storm damage reports, okay, because that is what is going to trigger the funding for disaster recovery. Until we have that money, we are going to have to rely on whatever insurance coverage is available. And again, I showed you a few of the programs where you might be able to find some help doing repairs. We have, of course, at NHS, we have a rehab and repair department. And we can talk to you about what resources might be available. They're primarily loans. We will not dig you a hole and loan you money that you cannot repay. All right. And we are also here to help you in terms of your financial situation, which may well be very affected by this. Especially in terms of working with your lender for around your mortgage issues, the property taxes, the water and sewer bills. Okay, these are issues that we deal with on a regular basis. So again, financial stability is something that you can come to us to discuss. The repairs are something you come to discuss. The most important thing, though, is let's get this information, these damage reports in, and see if we can get more money that we need from disaster recovery. All right. So thank you. Stay tuned with NHS. I am going to close the program, okay, one more time, and that is when we are going to get the okay businesses they want. Okay. Okay, we've had some more questions here. Oh, yeah, businesses. Yeah, we're focusing on home ownership, homeowners and renters. Um, the business information, the insurance situation is pretty much the same. Okay. I don't know what the city is doing for businesses, but we can look into that. Stormwater and sewer water. Okay. Okay. Water in the basement because the storm drains were overwhelmed. Again, where did the water in your basement come from? If it came rolling down the street and flowed into your basement, that is moving groundwater. It is a flood. It doesn't matter if it came from the sewer or the water main or just the rain. Okay, it's moving groundwater. That's a flood. Only a flood policy will cover it. If it came up through the drains because they were overwhelmed and the system backed up on you, okay, it doesn't care if we call it stormwater or sewer water. If it came backing up through the drains, that is backup of sewers and drains. It is covered by a homeowner's policy if you have the endorsement. Speak to your agent, okay? And again, don't tell them that you were flooded. Tell them that you have water in the basement and discuss with him the origin of the water, or her, the origin of the water, and whether or not your policy has coverage for that. Okay. Um, okay. Okay, and we've got some other neighborhood issues about blocking the drainage. Okay. Um, remove the homeowner's part of the damage tool. We'll look into that. I understand there are some issues with the complexity of the damage report, but please do the best you can and get those damage reports in. Okay, now, okay, here we go. I am going to close the webinar. Okay, oops. Uh, as I shared when it was close. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to get one more slide into here. Okay, I'm going to get this. Oh, I get here. Okay, the snapshot. I'm going to close the webinar now. You are going to see your screen show a link for our snapshot survey. Please click on the link and respond to the survey because this is where our HUD funding comes from and we need your support, okay? And if you don't, or if you can't, send us a donation. We're always happy to accept. Okay, I do have to close now. Okay, thank you. I have to click on the right thing to close. Okay, and I need to whoop, uh, leave. Okay, we are now going to see the link come up. Thank you for your time and attention. Do continue to ask us, reach out to us with your questions and concerns.